Welcome everybody. Today on the Him Built channel, we're going to be going over our EPS conversion that I kind of alluded to way back on my very first video when I depowered the power steering rack. There's multiple ways you can do this. There's lots of people who go and buy the Volvo pump, which I'll put a picture here. You put it in line instead of running the pump off your car. I got a old kit. This unit itself is from a Saturn Vue. You can get them in that, or I believe it's a Chevy Equinox is the other one that also has it. You can get a slightly smaller version out of the Prius, out of, I think a newer Corolla will have them. There's a bunch of cars that'll have essentially this unit. They're usually up underneath your dash. And so, you know, this side goes out to your rack. This side comes from your steering wheel. So this was originally pulled from an Equinox or Vue, and it was built by a company called Highboy, I guess, or something like that, to put in late 60s to late 70s Ford pickup trucks is what this kit originally came out of. I got it for nothing, so I have all this. This side is obviously Equinox Vue to Ford box of some sort. I have a small intermediate shaft that went from the Ford steering wheel to the top side of that box. We'll be cutting essentially just this top piece off because I need this. Matches the top splines there. So all of this will be useless. If you pull one from a Vue or any of the cars, try to grab the U-joints. You can reuse or cut this section off because you'll need it to weld onto your factory piece. There's a bunch of companies that do make universal joints. That's what this here is. It's your universal so that your steering can be on an angle and it all still spins the way it should. Make sure you grab them. There's a few companies like Flaming River, Borgeson, and I'm sure there's others after those, but Flaming River, I found they do sell the lower one, which, if I pull it off here, this one I won't need. I will be buying the Borgeson Vue to 3/4 double D, but it's your standard race car piece. It's double D shaft, is slightly rounded, flat face on either side. Lots of people use them. What is it? A few of the aftermarkets, I think Garagistic is the one, and Condor, they make, you know, the piece that goes in line of your factory. If I have it somewhere, your factory lower joint like this that has the double D and new ends. Borgeson sells the end that fits the Beamer rack, which is, it's 17 millimeter with 54 spline. So I'll be getting one of those for the rack side to double D. And then the Vue is, it's 18.5, 36, I believe, or something like that. I have it wrote down, but I'll be getting one of that to double D and replacing essentially this piece down to the rack with proper race style. They'll be polished stainless, if I'm not mistaken, the ones I want. They make them in chromoly if you want to go that route for lightweight. Not building a track car, don't need lightweight, don't need chromoly on the street as it were hardens. But we're going to, today we're going to cut this up. We're going to see how deep we can get. I only have a few things here to kind of get there. Probably design up a mount, maybe. If I design it up right, I might be able to send it off to Sun Cut Send. I'm hoping to start using them to start making brackets. If you follow saw the post I made on the YouTube, I'm starting to design a floor mount pedal kit for the E36, which I want to send all that to Sun Cut Send as well. Follow me on Instagram. I post pictures of that there too, but we're going to make a custom pedal set. As the Wellwood one's nice, the Tilton ones are nice. I just don't have a grand to drop on pedals. Through Sun Cut Send, I could probably build it and cut it for sub $300, which isn't too bad. Plus, then I can make it fit the car, fit the way I want it to, versus making a pre-built kit fit into the car. I can make it fit the car, because when we get to the floor on that side, which is quite rotten. That side's way worse than the passenger side was. We're going to, instead of having the curve up, we're going to straight it, go so that we have the most room. Because I don't, like I said on my last video, I don't want anything on the firewall. This is the only thing coming through the firewall. It's going to be nice and smooth. It's going to look different. So with that, I'll get you set up looking at the table, and we'll get the column kind of disassembled because we need to cut it down. We'll try to set the power motor somewhat in place under the dash there, as we have to make a mount. The factory was mounted off of this because it could pivot. The problem is that means I have to have a huge hole in the firewall to pivot this. I always run my steering wheel straight to the bottom on tilt columns, so this is gonna revert to a non-tilt and stay just straight, perfect. So this won't be a big deal. We'll find the angle it needs to sit at. It'll live there with a bracket on there. The other reason for the floor mount pedals is to give this space as well underneath the dash as upward swinging pedals, which again, I think I have somewhere around here. Upward swinging pedals will be in the way of that. Low swinging pedals from the ground won't contact it, hopefully. We'll learn, because I want this in there. I mean, my plan is to mount it downward like this, but if I have to go upward to get it to mount so it's out of the pedal way the most, that'll be the route we go. But with that, like I said, over to the table. Over here on the table, we have our factory column, obviously all the EPS stuff. What we need to do is remove the ignition out of it, as we don't want to wreck any of this. I also already removed the actual ignition piece, as you don't want to send any voltage through this. You could destroy it. It is just held in with two tiny flathead screws. I kind of had to grind down a little precision screwdriver. If you have an actual precision screwdriver, you'll be able to get in there and pull them out. And then that just slides off the back. What we're going to do is cut two slits in these and thread them out, and then we'll replace them with actual bolts when we put it back together. We're going to get this off, and then get the column out of, well, the inner column out of the column casing, and start looking at where we need to cut this down to mate up to here. We will have to build or cut up a piece to bolt onto here, which that will weld onto this, and this will all be one unit with that under the dash. But to start, we'll get this all torn down and see how far we get with it. Okay, as you can see, that took a little bit. There is a C-clip on the top that you have to get off to be able to pull the rest of this off. But you're fighting the spring that's right here to be able to do that. So with that out, make sure you've got your spacer. Don't lose that. Okay, there's our lock cylinder dealt with. You can see that all comes out like this, drops in and out as it goes. If you ever have an issue with starting your car, it's usually this piece that's through here that is the problem, which turns this piece through here. You can see there, my X5, it had broken this piece and I could just not start my car. So if you ever have an issue where you turn the key and nothing happens, it could be this if you have everything else working. But with that, we'll put this to the side as we no longer need it right now. So with that, we have our column like this. That's where all your locks are. Couple taps, we have our inner column out, which by the sounds of it is completely hollow. So when we cut that, hopefully the two line up fairly good. We can weld them together. But that's all your column is on the inside, connecting down to your rack. We now have our empty column. I want to try to get this off because we're going to use a different way to mount this. Well, this area, I guess it's not a big deal because we'll be cutting this down to mate onto the end of that. So at this point, I just kind of I might actually just tighten this up right to the bottom, and that's where this is going to live because, like I said, I never used the slide on mine. So we're going to try to eliminate this or even just the handle at some point. So there's a lower bearing right there. Admittedly, with all these things, if you have steering column issues already, I would be checking lots of these things. Like I could straighten this back out, but we probably won't need this anymore as we're going to be, this will be our lower bearing, which this was, because this column essentially going to go on there like that. But we'll keep lots of this stuff to the side just to save it. You never know what you need. Okay, so I got that end cut off, ground down, cleaned up. What I didn't realize is at some point that must be what this company did. So this piece, the top, is part of the view because it is the spline that slides over this, but this side does not, which tells me that that U-joint, universal there, this is probably 3/4 36. They welded it onto the end here to give us that spline, which this should work out because I'm thinking that this is small enough that when we cut down our rack or our column, this should be able to slide in and weld along this edge to that piece. Now, with everything kind of in place, let me tilt this back over a bit. We have everything in place here. So this is roughly where I'm thinking our lengths and everything should be. So with this, we've got a little indentation right here, which is this to here because we had that whole piece over. This should be in line with the hole. Obviously what we had sticking out here. So we're going to try to sit it back, and I think because I'm going to drill the hole, just probably an 1/8 inch or a 1/4 inch hole. It'll give us an idea where we need to be there and get this, because at this point I'm thinking this will not sit through the firewall because of where all of this lives. It would be at a weird angle to be able to get there. Unless this is pointed downward, it might work, but we are Gonna attempt to get this kind of living in place. I found a piece of 1/8 inch plate for this mount. We need to make this mount, but we have to get this all cut up and everything kind of, it starts with this piece being roughly where we need it under the dash. Then we can cut this down to mate up to where we need it to here. This doesn't go over here, but you can see my pile of metal. We might have a piece of exhaust pipe that actually fits around this, goes to here, gets welded to that, bolted to here, and then this welded to this, and all that. So this will go in, and we have to figure out a way to stop the column from going that way. So when you pull on your steering wheel for any reason, it doesn't come back out this way. That could be very bad. So we have to find a way to lock this to here, which, if it all works out, there is, if this will square up right, there's a hole here for a set screw, which was sitting right there. I have right there. So when we put it all together and we slide this over here, that I'll just grind a little bit off this line here and it'll go in. We'll tighten that down, slide the column over, and rebuild everything on this side because the column did come out that way. So this going over top will work, and it should hold this in place, and we shouldn't ever have an issue of pulling our spline off the column for any reason while we're driving. Okay, so we're in the car. We got the column mounted up with the dash bar again because we're going to need this to help us find ourselves. And because I'm not against showing my screw-ups, I thought I had planned out where the hole needed to be up here. This height definitely isn't right because of the fact that the firewall's there. It should be already on the other side of the firewall at this point. This will stick through just a little bit or right at the edge. But we can see that we need to be more so on my weld line here. So what we'll do is we'll drill a new hole, I'm thinking, because if you know E36s, these are usually too far to the passenger side. You feel very off center. I currently have it pulled as far this way as possible. You can't go too much because your dash and all that won't allow it. So we're at as much to the door as we can go, which is going to help us here. Got to remove this at some point. But when we look down the column, everything looks very straight and in line, which is what we're looking for. So, like I said here, I'm going to probably drill my hole up probably at the top edge of where the column's currently sitting. That's going to drop the steering wheel just a little bit, and then we're going to start tackling getting our motor up into place so we can start cutting this up and everything to make it work in here. Okay, so actually, after reviewing a picture, which I'll put over here, your column is kind of in line with your two fuel lines coming up. So that is about right. I might be able to actually come over more so to where I drew this line. As you can see, I kept a line here, and there's one that's just barely visible on camera right here for my height and everything, because I wanted to somewhat keep this in the same position so everything coming out worked. So I might actually drill this hole just a little bit this way, more so right here, not nearly this far over like I was thinking, because when I looked at it from this side, that didn't seem right. But you'll see from the picture, like I said, I'll put right here, it is more so right here where we are. So we're going to keep that. We're going to open it up to a 3/4 hole so I can try to stick the ending of that shaft somewhat through there to give myself a spot to sit on, and then we can build from there. Okay, so we got our hole drilled out to 3/4 of an inch roughly, which is where our U-joint will sit right about here to go down to our column. And then with that, I cut the other end off that shaft wherever it went, because this is the bottom spline to here, and this is going to be inside the car. So we cut that off, cut the bottom off of our column for the BMW thread or spline shaft on this end. So when I order a new Borgeson end, it'll fit, or actually it's a Flaming River, it'll fit over the end of this. Slide with this in here. This will stick out of the firewall. Hopefully, probably about that much of it should fit out the firewall. I mean, I get to decide how much is out. So this is going to get welded in like this and then clamps onto here so that we can position our whole piece. So I'll get to tacking this and then we'll get to positioning this under the dash so that we can slide the main column section. We'll probably put this in and slide this over and see where we need to cut both of these, essentially to get this to bolt up back to where it was, this to the right length, so that we can weld this piece into the bottom of our column, and then it's all one section and essentially done. I found a piece that has a couple tabs on it. We can cut this up. It'll fit our bolt holes, our back, or our plate that'll connect these two for the firewall, and then our mounting plate on this side. We're going to use 18 gauge because the column outer shell is only a rolled piece of 18 gauge. So this with a piece of 16. I even looked up the factory piece that slides over this normally. It's made out of 18 gauge as well, so I'm not too worried. The majority of the bracing is going to be based off this section. This just holds the column, so I'm not too worried there. But I'll get to tacking this and cleaning it up, and we'll get to kind of installing it down in there in the car so that we can start making everything. Okay, as you can see, tacked into place. We will weld obviously all the way around, nice thick bead so it doesn't obviously go anywhere. This is holding our intermediate shaft from the column to our rack, so we don't want any problems. Using a factory spline and a multi-spline like this is a lot safer, especially it has that rib in it. So the set screw, like that one, will lock down into place and you don't have to worry about it being able to slide back and forth. So this is a good start here. We'll get it on here and start placing this in the car. So there's our assembly. As you can see, it's quite long now, obviously, but this needs to go to the firewall. This needs to essentially attach to the firewall in a way. The best way would be able to, swap this end out of here with the end for the BMW, or be able to extend this out. But there's no simple way to do that without, I can tear the whole box down, cut this off here, weld it. It just makes it a lot harder to reinstall as this shaft is smaller than this shaft. Just a little bit of headache to be able to do such a thing when I can just bolt this on. I'm not scared that this is going to come apart with a solid fillet all the way around here. This is the factory joint bolted on here. This weld held up against 37-inch mud tires on a Ford F-250 for about a decade before it got taken off, so I'm really not worried about that weld either. So all this should hold together the way I'm hoping. So we'll get this up under the dash and start fitting the rest of it. Okay, so after some fiddling around, I had to remove, where was it? This bar and the piece that hangs off of over here for the metal knee bolster that normally goes under your dash, purely because putting the box all the way back up against the firewall impeded. So right here is where your factory brakes mount. And if you're using factory brakes, you'll be super screwed because that motor wants to end up literally right in the way of your brakes. So what we're going to do is we're going to bring the motor of it farther this way underneath the dash bar in front of the brake. So the motor should end up kind of in this area ish, which is still underneath the dash bar and everything because you got a fair amount of space right here. So we're going to try to mock that up. We need to make a longer bar now to get through our hole in the firewall over there. And the top side of our column, that little piece right there, is essentially going to be the entire length of our stub shaft off our box. We're going to try to reuse a section of the column inner to extend our column lower, which I should have thought about this before I did everything, but it's really hard to mock it up in your car without being able to really hold it there, and the stub shaft out the backside really didn't help. So with it now, I'm going to try to mock it up because we're going to use the two bolt holes that are there to re-bolt up into here and hold that motor kind of in place, which will give us room for our brakes because I'm doing a different kind of brakes. If you saw my posts that I made on YouTube, I was going to do floor mounts, but I can't. As much as I want to, the heights and everything aren't going to work with everything that I want to do. I don't want to raise my gas pedal up. I want it kind of living in an OEM sense. So we're going to do reverse mount under dash one. So the master cylinders, if I can find a good position, the master cylinders are going to live in this general area. They're only about 2 or 3 inches long. So they're going to live up here with the pedal kind of swinging in its OEM position down there. I'm designing a set, so we're going to 3D print them, kind of get them up in place in here, and make sure they fit with the power steering, because the power steering is a major component. I can make the brakes work with like cantilevers and stuff like that, so I'm not overly worried with the brakes just yet, but I want to get that under the dash to actually have steering. Then one of the next few videos, hopefully I get this stuff 3D printed, we'll start making a brake assembly fit in here and a new mount for our electronic pedal for the M54 as we're keeping the drive-by-wire. So we're going to do that. I've got, where is it? The factory pedals there to use for some dimensions, but we're going to get back to somehow fitting this thing under here. Okay, so we've got it roughly where it's going to live. I think I'm going to twist it and make our mounting points up here lay more flat, but we are in the center with our lower piece. As you can see, it's not perfectly aimed at it, but we will get there better once we have our upper column modified to fit our 3-post and kind of all bolted in here. So I'm going to cut that up and kind of start making it fit to this so that we can get that side more aimed at what we're doing. But as you can see, this is basically what we're going for. Leaves us lots of room back there to get our braking system into place. But so far so good with the EPS conversion. Okay, so after measuring from where this bolt hole is on the dash to where the face of the motor starts, we got about 80 millimeters center to the edge. So we're going to cut this off maybe just a little bit more so we can trim our way in. I need to go and get a piece of 1.5-inch pipe that goes around the front side of that motor where the 3 bolts are, so that we can go to here. It'll most likely get welded up to here, as this is like 35 or 32 mil. It's fairly small. So we'll have to make that, Like I said, we're going to use a piece of 18 gauge or 16 gauge, whatever I have sitting there, to make a flange for it to bolt to the front and bolt to this, and then we'll be able to hang the motor off of this, and then we can figure out the rest of this to get it down to the firewall with this. Same, we'll have to cut this down somewhere in this region so we can weld that in and slip it over the motor and tighten it in, and then we can bolt this all together. Sadly, I need to order myself a hub to fit my steering wheel on, which I'll get around to doing real soon, but this will get this started right here so we can get that motor hanging right here and aim it more at that hole. Okay, so cut ourselves a little paper template that matches our drive box here. When you go to do this and you pull one of these out of whatever car you pull it out of, try to take the whole column. It saves you from having to make this and go buy a bunch of stuff. I'm on hard mode apparently, so we're going to make a new piece for here. You can see, if I can get this to stand level again, this is where this is going to be. What we're going to do is we're going to line these up so that they're in line with that mounting hole so that it all bolts in, which means that's this side. This side's going to aim a little bit that way, which isn't a big deal because of where the bolster used to live. That's not going to be in the way. This will be like that. We're going to take this and we'll run mount straight up to the bottom side of our rain tray right here. It'll mount somewhere probably up here. So, but we want to get the front side dealt with so then we can aim it at that hole in our firewall. But I need to run out to the store and get a chunk of, it's going to be a big piece, but a piece of exhaust pipe, 1.5 inches to go over this. We'll cut this out, get this all kind of tacked into place so that we can get it up under the car and start modifying our inner column to mount back on here as well. Okay, so I've made my flange. Made it out of 1/8 inch plate since I decided I had that laying around. Got a piece of exhaust tubing that is 14 gauge, so it's fairly thick, which will go onto here. The column is about 14 gauge as well. As you can see, even with 1.5 inches, I did have to open it up, which will weld these shut. No big deal, but it fits around just barely. Cut and ground this. I know wherever my little stencil went, I was gonna follow this, but instead of spending over an hour doing all this by hand to make it look like that, I decided just a nice triangle to get it done. 3 holes that are just slightly bigger than 6 mil, just to get it in place. So now that we have this, I'm gonna tack our extension piece onto here, get it trimmed down to match to that and fitting over it, and then we can do this to this, and everything should start to bolt up into place. As you can see, fully welded on. Absolutely not the prettiest. I mean, it's pretty good. It's Meg. But it's hidden under the dash. We'll clean it up. Now we're going to cut it where they made the little notch in here for the 2 pipes to come in. Because I had cut this so that it sat on that face down there. And we're going to get that to get as close as possible. But I'll probably actually cut at the swage line right here, so that we can duck it down, hammer it on a little bit, and then this will get welded to that, oriented just right so that it sits level with this, so we can make the bracket from here to the car. But with this welded to our outer column, we'll be able to mount this up into the car at bare minimum, and then determine, because this is going to have to more than likely be cut off as this kind of lands at our opening for our key lock, which I do want to keep the ability to have that. If I can't, it's not the end of the world, but I want to be able to keep that whole situation a part of this so that it locks it out. But we can cut this back. This is not a necessary part. We can cut it back. Our piece right there, however it wants to go on, can go all the way down. That's not a big deal. So we'll cut this back to make this fit the way we need it to once we get there. Oh, it's the my set screw stopping me. But yes, this will end up down in here, get tightened on first. This whole setup will go over, and then it'll go in the car. Okay, so with it tacked into place, you can see what I was saying by it runs a bit long, but it does run down the center of our inner column, which fits over top of it. So what I can do is take my piece and weld it on and run it down and leave that in the middle where it lands, because that'll be inside of this area, and this will be somewhere more like this, so we can bolt it on, which I could probably do right now. Cut this, get it inside of there, and place it so that the spline ends up just above. That piece ends right here. But we're gonna test fit this under the dash and see how well it fits again. Okay, so with it just temporarily bolted in place, which it's pretty strong as it sits, it sits a little, I know all my wiring is kind of in the way right now, which isn't great. I feel like it sits kind of low to where my feet are. Like, I think it could be fine, but I also don't have a carpet, so I'm expecting like an inch higher. So it seems kind of low. So what we'll do is we're gonna make a mark on the underside somewhere right here and twist this motor more up here, which kind of puts the more open space towards my toes, and stuffs this here, which kind of sucks because I wanted to make these straight up, but if I have to go, you know, angle up and land somewhere right here or back over on this brace, this side will be the same. It'll be a little bit more close to the brace up here, so I'll be able to get to it, but this just seems a bit low. I know the bolster kind of probably came to about here, so we need to just ever so slightly. So I'll get to quickly doing that, and we'll get back in here and see how it fits. And if I like it, we'll weld that seam and get to doing this section, get that all back in so it sits there. Sadly, I won't be putting the dash in quite soon, so I won't know exactly how it works, but the other end does need to come up a little bit so we hit that hole a little bit better. Okay, so we're back at it. I twisted the motor up. You can see we're now pointing way uphill. It gave a lot more space underneath there because we don't have that motor hanging. But using a piece of pipe, you can see we are angled down versus where that hole needs to be. So the back end of this needs to go upward just a little bit. But I also, because this is the next day, I thought about it all night, and I'm not gonna build this piece out of old stuff that I have here. I'm risking not having it sit perfectly flat. So with that, like, cutting this, where'd my other piece? Welding all these pieces back on, I'm risking having everything slightly out of alignment and it not rotating properly. So the piece that we have back there, there's a company that makes another one that is similar to this one right here. This is the wrong spline, or else I would use it, but it has the proper spline and it is a 3/4 smooth wall. So what I'll do is I'm going to order probably 18 or 20 inches worth of 3/4 36 spline. It'll have splines on either side, so we'll cut it short, slip it in here, put a hole, weld it all the way around, rose weld it on either side so it's nice and strong. And because this is a machined inner surface, the shaft that I'll buy is a machined surface as well. There won't be any tipping in it, so it'll weld in perfectly straight and it'll go in the way we need. So then when we do the final install, you shove the shaft through in there. If I can actually get it to, you put the shaft in and then put all this together so that you put it in, use our set screw here, lock it to the end of the shaft, and then all of this is together, which I have to order it and order a piece. So putting the engine bay side on will be after, but it's not needed for me to finish this. As long as I know that I have that aimed at that hole perfectly, we'll be good to go. So what we're gonna do is start twisting this up to get that shaft just right and make our two lower brackets to hold this, because I like where this is sitting. Side to side, I've moved it more towards the driver's door, which is a common thing on E36s. The column actually sits too much to the passenger side, so I've got it shifted over just enough that it's over there, it's tucked up. So we're gonna get to building this into place, and hopefully next week I'll have it all designed out for the pedals, and I can get that ordered up as well, so it's here for the next video, and we can start test fitting pedals in there, get the harness back up into place as it kind of runs up and over. And all welded up under there, so this will be nice and strong. We also welded our tilt column solid. As I said earlier, I don't care about tilt, so we're eliminating that completely. We'll figure out a way to hide the whole thing. But with that, this portion is done. I do want to send all these pieces out once we're closer to the end for powder coating, so hopefully this gets powder coated real nice with it all. But let's start making the shaft on the inside work. With our inner column, we know that this needs to be centered somewhat in there, but we also have that much spline in there, so we don't need to keep this full length. It doesn't need to touch the bottom. We also have, obviously, our spline shaft that goes on there. So my plan here is we're going to get this roughly in this area so that this grub screw is going to land somewhere probably right under here, which I might even make a hole, which will be useless purely because this could land any which direction. But we're going to cut this shaft off right about here, then somehow hopefully get it to the inside. It looks like it should fit, but we'll start with that. So I did not realize this ducks down at this point to a smaller size, which means it doesn't actually fit over top of our spline. So we will have to cut it down to get it to sit where I need it to at roughly this height, which is a great deal of fun. Okay, so to figure this one out, like I said, we know we need this essentially centered in our hole down there. So we're going to center that up. I know we need this shaft needs to be essentially cut at this point here, which, if I get this to sit just right, it would be nice. Where is... We'll take our tape measure, and from the face of our mount, the face of our mount to where it should land is 4.5 inches, which is roughly right here. So we're gonna cut this off here, and then we'll start sliding this shaft over to get this to land about here, and then figure out getting the this and this to line up perfectly, which I have a small plan for. So if you noticed, I wanted to see if that size would fit in, and it'll fit to where the splines stop. So what I'll do is I'm going to take this, just the splines, because as you can see, it's just the spline difference to here. Take the spline difference off here. This will slide over, which will stop a little bit of this. Put this on in this direction, and then we can tack it and then pull it apart and weld it together. Okay, so I went a little bit farther and I actually cleaned it up, got it squared up very nicely. So I'm going to burn this all the way around because it's the length that I need, and then we will get to fitting this into the right spot and putting a groove in here so we can turn the set screw right down, and drilling a hole probably down in the bottom middle, which I think is on this side here, to hold so that we can go through with our Allen key and lock it into place so it never comes up off here. As you can see, nice weld all the way around. Shouldn't ever have to worry about that coming loose. If you can't do good welds, don't do steering. This is holding your lifeline and people around you. So just take that into precaution. If you're modifying steering and you're not, you don't feel very confident with your welds for something like that, take it to somebody or to a shop and they should be able to do it for you, because this holds you to the road and stops you from hitting other people. So make sure it's good. So next up, we'll get this all fitted back into the big part of the column. Okay, so this marking here is where the bottom of our piece sits. Yes, I cut it down a little bit. I must have a tiny burr on the inside, which isn't allowing it to go all the way through. But I have an inch worth of spline engagement on here, which it's only about an inch anyway. This marking here is where our set screw is going to be. So I'm going to grind a big flat spot right here for it. And then we're going to put the grub screw in, put this all together, probably knock the grub screw down ever so slightly so it sits within our shaft nicely. And then we're going to rebuild this part together and get it mounted up in the car and start making our mounts off this side. Okay. Well, since that went flying across the shop, we'll just build this up, and I will buy some grub screws so that I can actually fix this. Or finish it, I guess. But I mean, it's not as necessary to have right this second, since this all has to come apart again so that we can powder coat and all that stuff. So I'm not going to sit and cry about it, and we're just going to continue on our way. So as you can see, hopefully we're lined up there. This is all the way it should be. So what we're gonna do is take our column parts and put this back together for now, so that we can place it up under the dash the way it should be. So we have, hopefully you can see it, we have a working column now that is electrically power steered. Got to figure out why my key won't come out, but not the worst problem to have right now. But we have a nice working column. Everything's centered up nice. I mean, it's not necessary to do, but we can go and put our snap ring and collar on here. But with this, we'll get it into the car and start making this bracket to make sure we're still going through the firewall the way we should be. But as you can see, the fact that this still spins, if anybody's watched Jimmy Oakes, when he welded his, I think he grounded it weird and welded the motor gear to the casing, or the motor gear to the gear that goes through here, something like that, and stopped it from working. He also believes he fried the computer. Mine still spins free by hand, so I'm more than certain it's fine, as in here is just two magnets that lock it into place to make the motor spin it one way or the other, so I'm not too concerned. Like I said, if I've ruined this, I'll go buy another setup or go in there, but this is not quite the DIY to get into your car, but it's a good visual of kind of the work it takes to get underneath the dash with one of these. So we'll put it under the dash. So again, as you can see, hopefully it's visual, we're still downhill, which means we need to come up on this, which isn't a big deal. There's a few things here that can probably help with that. But we are going to essentially just force it to go the way that we need. Loosen these off ever so slightly. So that we can get that more in line. But we will go tuck this out of the way. All this harness is going to end up back there, but we want to get my pedals into place. But thus far, we are relatively where we need to be. It actually looks like, there we go. It actually looks like we need to go like that, just a slight twist to the side, and we'll bring it up to shoot that column out the right spot. Okay, so as you can see up there, I got my first bracket tacked into place. I left it a little long on the edge so that I can brace it this way or the other way depending on how my brakes fit up.
So I'm going to leave it like this so that I can go this way if I have to, or that way, because this is going to have some side to side. Now I'm going to make up the one, if I could get my finger to go the right way, from here up to there, because that holds the column anyway, so it's fairly strong. So we'll go up and over to there, and it'll be the same. I might just brace them together, weld it up here, and it'll stop it from wanting to twist itself off the car, and then this will be done. But as you can see, we got our column, piece of wood to hold that bar up a little bit straighter, and so far so good. Okay, so kind of went off there, made our second bracket that holds it into place. Everything is just tacked up. I will say, if you don't have a proper way to bend steel, slice it halfway through, bend it, and then you can weld the edge. Just as good, will work. I mean, you can see in my garage, I don't have the stuff to actually do a lot of this heavier gauge stuff easily, so I have to do kind of the crude way, but it still works. So we're tacked up there. So now everything's nice and strong as it needs to be. We're gonna leave it tacked like this because, like I said, I want to do the brakes next in here, as we're all competing for the same space in this area. So with the brakes, I'll be able to finalize how these brackets are going. But with that, the EPS is fully installed. Towards the end of the build, once we get more interior back in, obviously we'll go over wiring it all in and all that. But just getting it mechanically in is the first and major part. So with that, we're done here. So with all that, I'd like to thank you guys for watching. We have our EPS installed into the E36. As much as I wanted it 100% like out the firewall, as you guys saw, things kind of changed mid-build. My initial thought was that the motor was going to be up against the firewall, more columns sitting up there. And then when I really looked at it with the factory brake pedal in place, even though I'm not using it, my initial thought was floor mount pedals. I can't get them to work the way I want. The Willwood ones sit too low or too high, I forget what it was, but it would involve moving my firewall that's below, like by the wheel, farther out than I really wanted to. I had a plan of where it needed to be, and it just wasn't going to work out the way I wanted it to. So now we're going to go top mount reverse swing. So the reservoirs are going to land essentially beside the motor of the power steering unit there. So I'm designing up a set, because yes, lots of manufacturers make some. I want to make them fit perfectly into, obviously, the E36. I like to build things more than buying things, as you can see by everything I've just done to the car. It makes it a little bit, it fits it better when you build it to your car instead of buying something and fitting it to the car, because that always happens. But this is an install. Don't take it for Bible. Use the ideas if you want to ever do the same thing. I know Jimmy Oakes did the same thing on his Nissan. Boosted Boys did it on a CRV. I'm sure tons of other guys out there have done the same thing. There's kits you can buy. There's I think it's called E-Steering or something like that. They actually make a kit for the E36 to put, I think they use the Prius or the Corolla, which is a smaller unit, but you can go to the rec yard, pick these things up for sub $100, grab all the wiring, grab everything. I don't know, a couple days to figure it out, a couple hours, depending on how inclined you are with doing fabrication like this. But overall, I'm very happy with how it fits. It looks nice in there. It was one of those things I've been kind of waiting for. I had alluded to it in my very first video, which I'll try to link it. I'm still learning how to do all this on YouTube, but my depowering the E36 power steering rack, as I knew I was going EPS. I did not want to have the power steering pump in the engine bay, as with everything I'm doing, we're getting rid of everything, kind of making it tidy, trying to make it so that M90 supercharger I have, which is possibly the way I'm going. Depends on how funds go. I would love to get Rotrex. What was I looking at? A C3090, I think it was, or a C3084, something like that. They're good for about 350, 400 horse, which is what I want on here. So depends on where we get, how the funds kind of stack up. The motor is not a huge priority. I really want to get the whole car dealt with before I start truly dealing with the motor, as that's a lot of funds, and I like metal work more than engine work. Engine work is still relatively new to me. I mean, I've built a B series, but that was 15 years ago. So that's kind of in the background. I've been planning everything out. I got a list for it, so it's not a big deal. Right now, the M90 supercharger is the way we're going. I'd love to upgrade to something more modern, more compact, kind of like that, as that is something that requires way more work to make the 90 work versus to make a Rotrex centrifugal supercharger fit into the front of the engine bay. So with that, we'll go whatever way happens in the future, hopefully one way or the other, and you guys enjoy it. But like I said, we got that. That's all done. It's tacked in place purely because the next part will most likely change or solidify where my mounts currently live. And hopefully in my next video, I've at least 3D printed my pedals, and then we can send them off to be laser cut, as that is the next step to get them laser cut. But I want to 3D print them, get my seat down from up there. Yes, I'll probably be running only factory seats in the car, but they're a good baseline. If I ever decide to upgrade, I'm not sure, but I do have factory sport seats. Super comfortable. I love them, so I'll probably just keep them. But with that, I hope you guys like, comment, and subscribe. Stay tuned for more content, and we'll see you next time.